Princess Jia decided to abandon everything and leave, to let the emperor recognize his true daughter. In front of the imperial ministers, Mel pushed Xia in front of the emperor. There is someone I would like to introduce to your majesty. Doesn't she resemble the late empress? So I wanted your majesty to take a look as well. When the emperor saw Xia's face clearly, his gaze no longer shifted towards Mel. Seeing this, the chancellor immediately ended the meeting. The emperor could definitely recognize at a glance that Alencia was his true daughter. Not wanting to disturb the father and daughter, Mel quietly left the room. Everything was ready. The only thing he could do now was to leave without any regrets. The fake princess just wants a fortune, but she is caught in a tug-of-war between two daddies vying for her upbringing. Three doting brothers even resort to scheming. Even the fiancé of the real princess only favors her. But because the book traveler replaced the real princess's soul, the happy ending has been rewritten. He had his mouth sewn shut with silver needles. He was pushed by the world to the guillotine. What's even more ridiculous is that throughout his life he desperately sought love. Even with a knife at his throat, he still wanted to confirm, if, even for just a moment, he was treated as a daughter by the emperor. But his heart-wrenching cries scared the emperor, the true daughter. So he received no answer. He only heard the emperor's order to execute. In the end, he finally understood that love bought with wounds and scars. Is that really love? With resentment and regret, he died painfully under the blade. After reading this book, the girl was indignant about this. Although Philomel in the book did something wrong, it wasn't a death sentence. How dare she claim to be an imposter princess? She wanted to tell her father, to punish the author of this book. Mel sighed deeply, staring at the book in her hands, deep in thought. The queen has blonde hair and blue eyes. The emperor has black hair and blue eyes. The true princess resembles the queen. The maids often say she bears no resemblance to the late queen. His Highness deeply loves the queen, yet he completely ignores his daughter, because the birth of the little princess caused her mother's death. So the emperor is very resistant. She stared at herself in the mirror. She comforted herself over and over. It's just a coincidence with the name. The character in the book is too ruthless. She kills for stealing a necklace. Only after realizing it was a misunderstanding does she apologize. At this moment, the wet nurse's voice was heard. The little yellow girl immediately hid the book. Because of the constant trouble, the wet nurse has come this time to supervise her learning of etiquette. Only then will she have the chance to dine with His Highness. Meyer muttered that it was a lie. No matter how obediently she studies, don't even mention praise. Even the emperor doesn't come to see her. She whispered to the wet nurse. Do I not look like my mother? The wet nurse said the queen is both intelligent and mature. If I want to emulate the late princess, the princess should stay obediently on the day of the founding. That is the annual celebration blessed by the sun god. But the activities must take place in the sunlight. However, it started to rain heavily that day. Reluctantly, the emperor has ordered a postponement. Mel sensed that everything happening recently was exactly as written in the book. And the protagonist, Alencia, also could not attend the event because of this. If it really is as described in the novel. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt darkness before his eyes. Mel rushed out onto the rooftop. I beg you. Please don't give up, okay? Please, Dad. Li Di was mixed with tears. Mel's eyes were soaked. The boy watched all of this, but couldn't change the prince's decision. Father took him away. Looking at the girl in yellow standing in the rain, the boy turned back from time to time. The wet nurse who learned of this punished him by hitting Mel's calves with a stick. After everyone left, Mel placed his hand on his heart. His father's words left him disheartened. The maid stepped forward to comfort him, and applied ointment to the little yellow girl. The festival will be held in a week. This is exactly the same as the content in the book. The hand holding the book began to tremble. This is a fable. She is not her father's daughter. She is a fake princess. After finishing that book, Mel fell into a high fever the next day. The wet nurse urged her to get up quickly. The prince summoned her. She lay limp on the bed. She answered in a hoarse voice. This time it's not an act. It really hurts. Grandmother placed her hand on Mel's hand. After a while, he brought medicine for the little yellow girl. I have already reported to His Highness. Ning is unable to attend due to a high fever. Not long after, Mare quickly fell asleep under the effects of the medicine. When she woke up again, she was drenched in cold sweat. The dream was both real and cruel. The emperor and the true princess, looking at the slowly dying self. Will Dad really kill me? Even though I already know the answer, I still want to deny it madly. I want to live. What if Philomel starts living seriously from now on? What if I become the daughter Dad hopes for? Even if it's fake. He has treated himself as a daughter for 9 years. Perhaps a little warmth will remain. Holding on to the belief of changing the future, Mel must go confirm something, to avoid being discovered. He tiptoed down the hallway. Voices were coming from the next room. Mel couldn't help but stop. Put your ear to the door. Why do we have to suffer these troubles because of the princess? If he didn't cause trouble every day, we wouldn't be facing a reduction in our sentences. The maid said loudly, if I were the princess, I would surely receive His Majesty's favor. Mel was so shocked that she couldn't speak. They are the ones who claim to protect themselves. They used to treat themselves well. Laughter filled the room. I really dislike Philomel. Rumor has it he doesn't even possess the divine power symbolizing royalty. At this rate, the Duke of Aberdeen might demand an annulment. It's quite blatant how much they dislike him. The poor princess didn't even realize. Mel didn't want to listen anymore. He escaped from there, thinking of how kind she had been to him just now. Tears welled up in his heart. It's okay, don't let this hurt you. People say the princess's birth killed the queen. So His Highness hates him. Although it's diminished a lot now, he has no expectations for him at all. He would rather give the throne to a crab than let Philomel inherit it. In his eyes, that thing is not only unlike himself, but also not like the queen. So he has no feelings for him. All he hopes for is that he can live like a mouse, not appearing in front of him. However, these words turned into daggers that pierced the girl's heart. She returned to her room, choking back sobs. Tears flowed down uncontrollably. She just wanted to be loved. If I don't commit evil like in the book, will I be able to save my life? In the novel, after being exposed as a false princess, she did not die immediately. Thanks to Alencia's sympathy for Philomel, she pleaded with His Highness the Emperor to forgive her. However, the villainous Mel repaid kindness with malice, ultimately executed. At that moment, a thought suddenly occurred to him. Run away before Alencia shows up. Get out of here. As long as he obtains the cherished ring passed down through the royal family, he can use the power of the sun god to teleport to a place he has been to once. But since he has no divine power, he needs a ring filled with his father's holy power. A plan must be made first, because thoughts are overwhelming. He slept deeply tonight. He didn't even notice when someone entered the room in the middle of the night. Looking down at Mel's thin little face, Eustace couldn't help but self-mock. What am I doing? If it weren't for Poland's constant nagging, he won't come here. Yusuf's hand slowly approached. It seemed that this time he wasn't pretending to be sick. Suddenly, the little one let out a sound, crying and murmuring, "Daddy, I will be a good child. So please don't kill me. I beg you." Eustace suddenly recalled that distant time for some reason. Every night, he feared the painful struggles of the child facing death, which reminded him of his own childhood. For the first time in his life, he felt a resemblance between his daughter and himself. He reached out to wipe the tears from the child's cheek. A little hand grasped his fingertip. Thinking back to Mel at that time, wasn't it just being willful, but rather seeking attention? Yet he immediately denied it. It must be an illusion. The girl had a high fever of 90 degrees, crying and begging her father not to kill her. Unexpectedly, the emperor plucked a star from the sky and handed it to his daughter. Mel chose to reject this love. Before the real princess returned, she had already planned to leave. Even for the fiancé she had long admired, she chose to let go and move on. Listening to the duke inside scolding Neethel, not to show a sour face to the princess, just because he couldn't go out with friends. "I know you're very sad, but you must fulfill your duties." In the past, he might have been unreasonable. Now, he opens the door with a smile. "Long time no see." But just as he sat down, the duke left, citing a meeting. Before leaving, he reminded his son to take care of the princess. Mel stared at him thoughtfully. "Once I fully recover, can we go on a picnic?" Nassar nodded readily. From then on, no matter what he said, Nassar agreed with him. His meaningless responses and appropriate attitude made Mel feel reassured again. Nassar doesn't want to do anything with him. In the book, he is willing to give everything for his lover, but not for him, but for the female lead, Elencia. Mel stood up from her seat. "Let's pretend today never happened. Thank you for visiting me. Please don't come again in the future." Sal hurriedly got up. "If I have offended your highness," Mare immediately interrupted, "because I often meet with the young master. I have delayed making friends. Besides you, don't I also need other friends my age?" After hearing this, he was suddenly at a loss for words. He left with a farewell. Mel left gracefully. He imitated Nazar's smile. He was kind to everyone, but he gave his heart to no one. Only this way could he leave without any regrets. In the following days, Mel has changed her usual attitude, actively learning, showing exhibition. Her grades skyrocketed, no longer throwing tantrums, never picky anymore. Everyone was both surprised and astonished, realizing that the imperial princess has changed. On that day, when they met again, Mel suggested that both sides should not disturb each other. This should have been what Nissar hoped for the most, but a hint of disappointment stirred in his heart. The prince also felt the same disappointment. Before noon, the emperor invited him to have a meal together. However, the exquisite dishes and the awkward atmosphere made it hard for Mel to swallow. The emperor suddenly praised him for being sensible and well-behaved lately. Mel responded with polite words, saying it was all thanks to the excellent teacher provided by His Highness. Hearing the term, His Highness, Eustace frowned. The emperor raised the wine cup to his lips, thinking that to secure the throne, one must have a proper ambition. With words said to this extent, he indeed has something he wants to ask the emperor. Now the wet nurse is in trouble. Poland personally asked him to step down. Seeing the wet nurse unwilling to leave, Mel showed a little head and said, "Thank you for this time. Take a good rest." The wet nurse was instantly petrified. No matter how she explained, as long as Mel doesn't give in, everyone will suffer. Her escape plan has officially begun. In a few days, she will become a lady-in-waiting to the princess. But now she has become Mel's. Looking at the obedient little yellow girl, Dries felt quite surprised. It seems those bad rumors were just gossip. They actually dared to say such things. At this moment, the yellow girl said she had many beautiful clothes, so she invited her to take a look. Dries immediately agreed. Mel quickly got up and took her hand, leading her towards the wardrobe. Just as she was pleased with the yellow girl's childlike smile, Dries' face once again froze. The dress is fine. The problem lies in the closet. These clothes are mixed together haphazardly. They have nothing to do with the purpose and season of the dress. He glanced at the servants outside the door. It seems it's time to change the maid. Mel achieved his goal. Before long, all those involved have been sentenced to heavy penalties. The next day, he was going to get a strange drug. It was a powder made from ground sour noodles. He wanted to brew tea for His Highness, because the emperor often drinks alcohol. The book says this thing can sober one up. Mel pretended to be an innocent child. He asked Dreyfus to prepare the tea set. Then he secretly opened the bottle cap. A strong sour smell wafted out. Soon, he took out the stars given by his father. He mixed the juice inside with them. This way, it became an invigorating tea. He secretly tasted it. The flavor was just right. Go deliver it to His Highness now. After hearing this news, Poland immediately pushed the door open. "Your Highness, get up quickly. Look who has come." The adopted daughter is not favored by the emperor, so he mixed pickles with noodles to make a SpongeBob for the emperor, because His Highness has a lethal fondness for alcohol. Mel referred to him as the hangover tea. Poland praised the princess for her commendable filial piety. "Your Highness should not let this goodwill go to waste." A pungent odor wafted through the air. Justice's face turned pale at once. "Stay away from me." Seeing Mel's hand tremble uncontrollably, he hesitated for a moment. After sighing, he took the tray away. He was already prepared to face death. He lifted the teacup and downed it in one go. His furrowed brow gradually relaxed. The taste was surprisingly good. Since the queen's death, he had been living a life of heavy drinking. On the surface, everything seems fine, but in reality, he is useless. His wife is already dead. Even his daughter is fake. Soon, Mel shook his head violently. Who would sympathize with him anyway? The emperor will eventually kill him. So before running away, don't be soft-hearted. After a while, the emperor asked him what reward he wanted. As Philo Mel had predicted, he was a man of clear rewards and punishments, so he invited His Highness for a walk, to prove himself as an excellent heir. But before the emperor could arrive, a troublesome kid appeared. The boy threatened that only royals could enter. "Which family are you from? Do you not know that sneaking in is a serious crime?" Mel asked him to be quiet. The other party directly told him to shut up. At once, Mel lost his patience. "Leah Melrose." "Shut up," the boy gritted his teeth in anger. At that moment, a blonde woman came into view. Mel recognized her at a glance. She was Sylvia, the current emperor's cousin. Beside her, the eldest son, Rog, and Elrose were chosen as candidates for the next emperor. "Oh, Philo Mel, long time no see." Liam was startled. "Is Philo Mel a princess?" But Mom said, "The princess is not very impressive. When you become emperor in the future, brother, make this garden into an amusement park for me." Luogan immediately reminded him to keep it down. How dare he call himself emperor in front of the legitimate princess? But even so, Mayor couldn't say anything. "If we fight, we might be punished by Father Emperor. But to some extent, a warning is necessary. We should at least greet politely before leaving, right? Were you greeted like this by the Crab royal family when you were a princess before?" The lady chuckled softly. Sylvia. Eros greets your highness Philomel. Is it alright now? Mel has him kneel. This is how one should greet royalty. As soon as the words were said, father suddenly appeared behind. Mel had a sudden idea. Immediately pointed his finger at the troublemaker Liam, saying that his brother would surpass me and become emperor. Is that true? Seeing this, Eros hurriedly defended himself, and described Mel as a liar. A cold gaze pierced through him. In such a baseless situation, would Father Emperor believe him? Mel choked softly. I really heard it. Your Highness, I didn't lie. Eustace bent down. He wiped the tears from his cheek. You're not a liar. And I heard it too. In an instant, the Marchioness turned pale with fear. Logan immediately knelt down on the ground. I have committed a capital offense. I made a mistake out of concern for my immature brother. So I made a mistake. Liam once again rebelled against authority. Your Highness designated my brother as the heir. Halfway through the sentence, my head got hit by my brother and swelled up. The mother and son repeatedly defended themselves. Enough, a deep voice spoke. I never expected someone would conspire right under his nose. Sylvia, the reason I kept you around is that you aren't worth dirtying my hands over. If you don't want your neck cut off, then take your child and get out. I don't want to see blood today. Just like that, the three of them disappeared. They erased their names from Huangqi, monitored for a lifetime, living like commoners. So indifferent to their own flesh and blood. How could they treat a false daughter? It's obvious without needing to look. At that moment, the Emperor turned around unexpectedly. Aren't you going for a walk? Mel immediately followed. As the walk was coming to an end, he looked at the expression on his face, and asked, Your Highness, don't you like walking? Eustace echoed. But since we've driven away those worms, sometimes it's necessary to come out. Mel carefully opened her mouth. Then can you still occasionally walk with me? The prince did not immediately refuse, nor did he agree quickly. While Mel was thinking, he quietly said yes. The originally happy flower fell when the Emperor turned his head. Mel feigned seriousness, cleared his throat lightly, humbly leaned down. Thank you for listening to my request. Eustace murmured. Do as you please. From that day on, the morning after the Emperor overindulged in drinking, holding the premium sorrel tea, and entering the bedroom became Philo's daily routine. Poland is also actively cooperating to provide information. Justice glared at him while finishing the sorrel tea. Today, like usual, he took a walk. But the difference was, when he reported his outstanding results, the girl tripped over a stone and fell 100 meters away. She held back her tears and told herself she absolutely couldn't cry. The Emperor said nothing. He walked over and lifted her over his head. Panicked, Mel struggled. Eustace told her not to move. Then he hoisted her onto his shoulder, but she felt the posture was very strange. After thinking for a while, she placed it at her waist. She tried hundreds of different positions. Sure enough, the princess carried was the most suitable. This made Mel feel awkward to the point of suffocation. She quietly reminded him that it wasn't necessary. But the Emperor replied, if you're uncomfortable, just endure it. Mel had no choice but to obediently enjoy it. Until Eustace says something he doesn't like, he will just take a nap. Accompanied by a gentle warm breeze, Mel slowly closed her eyes. She fell into a deep sleep in her father's arms, discovering the Emperor holding the sleeping Princess Dryas. I was scared and ran over. Looks like she's tired. Every time I look for His Majesty, it's always very early. Perhaps they want to bring tea when you cough. I heard that Her Majesty the Queen also enjoys walking in the garden. Indeed, she resembles Her Highness the Princess. Eustace was lost in memories. When Isabella and I walked together, I mostly admired the scenery around us, while I just gazed at her. So this child may resemble me more. Not Isabella. Time flies. Philomel is 10 years old. He spends time with his fiancé Nassar as usual. Nassar asked, Does your Highness not like me? Philomel denied it. But the boy's gloomy expression did not ease. Did you hear my conversation with my father at that time? He was referring to the day he came to visit her in the hospital. It was also the day Mel decided to give him up. Seeing the little princess silent, Nassar stood up from his seat. He knelt on one knee on the ground to apologize. I apologize to you. I ask for your forgiveness. Until your Highness is no longer angry. The fake princess loved her fiancé for 10 years. She learned that she would eventually love the real princess. So she deliberately distanced herself from her. But the boy knelt on one knee and asked for her forgiveness. Until the prince's news arrives, Mel stood awkwardly in place. She still remembers the day she first met Nizar. The moment their eyes intertwined, he was captivated by him. Since then, he has been clingy to Nizar, wanting him to spend more time together. The boy gentleman agreed. That was the tenderness he had never received from his parents. He mistakenly thought it was love, not realizing that happiness came with a lie, so he doesn't force it. And he truly believes that even if he doesn't love me, it isn't his fault. If there is anything you are dissatisfied with about me, please tell me. I was born to serve you, my lord. As long as you tell me, I will change. Mel couldn't hold back any longer and shouted, You are yourself. Why were you born to serve me? Nassar hesitantly spoke up. Father said to live with that goal in mind. It seems he was brainwashed long ago. Mel couldn't let this go unchecked. From now on, please repeat after me. I am a unique person. I am not an existence born for someone else. I will live according to my own thoughts. The boy's voice suddenly stopped, as if he had found some kind of redemption. He firmly spoke the last sentence. Nassar is the heir of the Duke's family. In the end, I will marry Zhenhuan's daughter, Elencia. Although by then, Mel will also leave here. But I still hope he can live his own life. After all, you were my first love. The agreed time has passed. Nassar should go back now. He hesitated to say goodbye. Mel told him, if the Duke says that kind of thing again in the future, just tell me. I'll deal with the Duke. Nisa laughed until he cried. Watching him walk away, Philomel showed a satisfied smile. That evening, he took out the prophecy book and walked to the hearth, and suddenly threw it in. During this time, he has memorized all the important contents. The paper was burned to ashes. But at that moment, a miracle occurred. A dazzling light emitted from the ground. In the next second, the prophecy book appeared unharmed. The next day, he found the royal magician. First, raise various questions, and then steer the conversation towards the prophecy book. The future predicted by the wizard is filled with countless possibilities, but accurately recording what is going to happen in the future is theoretically impossible. Even the priest's prophecies have a 70% margin of error. Mel then naturally brought it up. The master of the magic tower, Humphrey, suddenly trembled. He panicked and fled, claiming stomach pain. The other wizards reacted similarly. Mel picked up the book to organize his thoughts. The master of the magic tower, Ish, is the biological father of Philomel. After escaping from prison for the first time, he fled to the magic tower. The master of the magic tower unconditionally helped him, but he used this power for evil, ultimately abandoned by his father. Sentenced to death by the emperor. Mayor thought for a moment. It seems I have to go find him myself. Maybe he still has a trace of love for me. On the day of the celebration, Mare unconsciously became nervous. Seeing this, her fiancé came over to show concern. There was a bouquet hidden behind me. I wanted to take the opportunity to give it to him, but I missed the chance. Mel was called to the stage to speak. I silently repeated, "Stay calm, little ice," 100 times in my heart. The audience was filled with cabbage heads. Fiery gazes were directed at me. I cleared my throat twice. The long-awaited declaration has begun, but the voice cannot be amplified. Nasir quickly realized the problem, but there is no backup speaker. Soon, the audience began to murmur. Mel's mind went blank. At that moment, the vision suddenly elevated. The father emperor lifted him up into the air. He handed over his microphone to him. Mel's face turned as red as a tomato. He wasn't a child anymore, but the situation was special. He gritted his teeth and finished. It was mealtime. Usually, he would be with his fiancée. Today, he took the initiative to invite the emperor. With an expression that seemed to seek compliments, the emperor instantly understood his little thoughts. But as soon as he heard he wanted that scarlet sword, Stislima rejected it. "It's still too early for you." Seeing his daughter wilt like a withered leaf, he added, "You can only use the red sword after reaching adulthood. But by then, Elixia will have returned." Father has always been tight-lipped. Except for that, anything goes. Mel, in a moment of impulse, shouted that he didn't need anything else. After saying that, he regretted it. The trust that has been hard-earned. But without that ring, the escape plan cannot succeed. This is a problem. The plan needs to be completely revised. At this moment, Dryce comes to report that His Majesty has brought tea to see him. If your Highness does not go, he will come personally. Mel thought for a moment that she didn't want to see his face right now, so she decided to pretend to be asleep to avoid him. Footsteps gradually approached. The Emperor called out, "Philo Mel, I know you're not asleep." Seeing that Mel wouldn't open her eyes, he continued, "I promise you. Wait until you turn 15, and I'll give you the ring." Melton immediately woke up. "Really, Eustace?" The young master advised, "It's better to use it sparingly." In the next moment, he excitedly jumped into the Emperor's arms. This startled Eustace. He was also stunned for 3 seconds. He immediately awkwardly pulled his hands away. Afterwards, I opened my little hand and counted. There are still 3 years. Although I didn't understand my daughter's intentions, Eustace still smiled with satisfaction. As time passed, Philomel turned 14. Princess Jia took charge of the social scene at the age of 3, but plotted to escape when she achieved success. It was all because the Real Princess returned. She will be pushed to the guillotine. To save her life, she gave up everything. At the adult ball, Mel appeared in grandeur. In the moment their eyes met, Nazar's heart raced unconsciously. He heard his daughter say she wanted to dance with her. Eustace shot a glare at his future son-in-law, jealously advising his daughter that the partner for the first dance is all superstition. Mel smiled and said she understood. With steady steps, she walked towards her fiancé. When they were in the same frame, everyone remarked on their perfect match, except for the Emperor. Mel slowly reached out his hand. Would Nazar like to dance a tune? Nazar's heart raced. He had completely forgotten to respond, until Mel asked him with concern if he was feeling unwell. Was he too tired from training? Coming back to his senses, accompanied by a faint trembling sound, Nizel reached out his hand. Mel naturally placed her hand on his, a broad and sturdy palm, a face that requires looking up to see clearly. Nizel now is no longer that arrogant little boy. For today, he has been diligently practicing his dance steps. Your Highness, please entrust yourself to me now. Mel told himself not to waver. Before leaving, he was merely a substitute for Elixia. After turning 15, he finally got the ring he desired. His father reminded him to use it carefully, as his daughter personally wore the ring. Now, the escape plan can truly be implemented. In order to prevent the country from falling into chaos, Mel plans to bring back Shenhuan for them. But no matter what choice is made, his biological mother will die. This is the price of switching them out. Mel murmurs to himself, will he sometimes think of me? Then, with a whoosh, he stands up. No more gloominess. The urgent task is to find Elixia. I need to personally deliver him to His Majesty. That way, His Majesty won't have time to worry about himself. That's right, this isn't for anyone else. It's something I'm doing for myself. From the very beginning, my goal has been survival. Not long after, a social party was held. Nazar's gaze remained fixed on Mel. His friend Carney nudged him. Is that little brat so happy just to dance one song? Nazar felt inexplicably down. Because I am the fiancé, I get to dance the first dance with him. When Mel noticed him, I just said hello. The emotions revealed in my eyes were about to overflow, but the next moment, I became desolate. To him, I am just his fiancé. Once bullied as a child, now I am living a life that everyone envies. As long as he is not around, the fiancé is unwilling to stay for a moment. The Emperor has completely become a daughter slave. He stands behind him at all times. But Mel's heart has long been shattered. He doesn't dare to share his love with anyone, because when the real princess appears, they will transfer all their love. So when the Emperor asks him what birthday gift he wants, Mel no longer craved. Just last year's ring was enough, but the Emperor insisted on giving it. Mel thought for a moment, murmuring Udina. When the palace heard that their daughter was interested, Eustace immediately offered to give it to her. Mel quickly declined. In the end, he wanted to go on a spring outing with your Majesty. He prayed fervently in his heart, please say yes to me. I finally found your true daughter. I heard from father that we can go. Mel's anxious heart finally settled down, but there would be a political meeting that day. It's also the Queen's death anniversary. Mel said it was fine to postpone it by 2 days. Isn't that just passing your birthday? But compared to that, national affairs are more important. After hearing that, he frowned tightly. The meeting is arranged to be held at the other palace. As soon as it ends, send them back. Although I don't know why father insists. But no matter what, as long as the Emperor is taken there, Mare's goal is achieved. At night, he leaned tiredly on the sofa, wondering if he had been living too hard. He simply didn't want to be disliked. When alone, he would think back to 6 years ago, confirming his father. He truly heard those words, hoping he would live like a dead rat. So he planned to live according to his own wishes, forgotten by everyone in the corner. But for the escape plan, he had to work hard to survive, and perhaps, once discovered to be fake in the future, he might be spared. Meyer opened that fable book, thinking of a future of freedom away from here. Joy and desolation found him at the same time, but he suppressed the desire to survive, because he didn't want his biological mother to die. After reading this fable, he realized that everyone has their own hidden story. How much the Emperor loved the Empress. He thought that Elixia would be very happy in his position, but his childhood was not much different from his own. If everything were to be confessed, they would achieve happiness in advance. Clearly, they could just run away like this, pretending to know nothing. But the truths they carry make it impossible for him to leave easily. That's why I want to return your real daughter to you. Dad will soon be free. but for some reason, I feel a bit lonely. Princess Jia decided to abandon everything, to find her true self for her father. She was calculating an escape plan in her mind, when her fiancé came over, worried that she would fall into the water. Meyer told him it was okay. She had seen enough of this lake. It was a subtle hint to leave. Nasal was completely unaware, and looked forward to inviting the princess for tea. Mel politely declined. He had an appointment with His Majesty. At that moment, Nasal's expression seemed to Mel to be one of guilt for not fulfilling the responsibilities of a fiancé. So he said, "I'm sorry. Please defend yourself." Then he elegantly brushed past, just like 6 years ago. He leaves without any need to worry. After all, he will be a perfect partner. This lake is really beautiful. Its voice holds back the departing footsteps. I understand why you come here often. I think I've started to like this place from the bottom of my heart. Philomel did not look back. She firmly believed in her heart. Saying these comforting words is just because of his kindness. That's all. Afterward, he found His Majesty, the Emperor. He prepared his favorite dessert. In the past, he always talked about grains. But now he was staring at him intently, not saying a word. Eustace took out the birthday gift. In case tomorrow is too busy, I'm giving it to you a day in advance. Meyer opened the gift box. It was a delicate golden ship model. The Emperor added, the real ship is still under construction. Once completed, it will be placed on this lake. Feel free to take a boat ride anytime. Even though I know tomorrow is your birthday, I want to wish you a happy 16th birthday in advance. Philomel was stunned. This was the first time he received a genuine blessing. In fact, today is his birthday. Tomorrow is actually Alencia's birthday. Words that couldn't be spoken drifted away like bubbles. His mouth was full of chocolate flavor. It's incredibly sweet. There are still 4 hours until the banquet. Mel arrived at the small town he had been searching for, accompanied by his maid. A gentle spring breeze, mixed with the scent of flowers, blew in through the slightly opened window. The sound of hooves stopped. Philomel walked towards the carriage. Excuse me. May I ask what brings you to my home? Following the sound, a head of beautiful golden hair like sunlight. Familiar blue eyes. Cheeks rosy like peach. Exactly like Queen Isabella's face. That is Alencia. Mel goes straight to the point. Can I come in and take a look? Shia did not know her identity, and brought Mel into the house. Hearing that her daughter had returned, Katrine was about to scold her, but then she saw the same hair color as her own. The moment she saw the face, the spoon fell from her hand. It's so nice to see you. Catherine's pupils constricted. Faced with her biological daughter, she was unwilling to acknowledge her. Instead, she wanted to drive her away. Mel questioned coldly, don't you know who I am? Catherine trembled all over, showing no joy or excitement, but instead collapsed helplessly onto the ground. Sia quickly helped her mother up. Her mother asked him to step away for a moment. After the daughter left, Catherine let out a sigh of relief. Mel calmly introduced herself. My name is Philomel. The name is derived from a flower that only grows in the Yutna region. The flower has been revealed, yet her mother still refused to acknowledge it. A person as distinguished as you should not be here. Go back to where you belong. Mel laughed lightly. You should know best. That there is no place that belongs to me. Catherine swapped his daughter with the princess. Guilt often drove him to mistreat Alencia. Even so, because of Alencia's kindness, he ultimately opened his heart. According to the novel, next year he will confess this matter, devoting his life to the Emperor. Although he knows what kind of situation Mel will be in when the Real Princess appears, he still did it. Mel slowly spoke. I will take your daughter to see the Emperor now. To reunite a father and daughter who do not know of each other's existence. Catherine shouted, no. Even if I didn't give birth to her, Shia is still my daughter. Do you know how much effort I put into raising her? Her words were like knives. It pierced deeply into Mel's heart. Someone as lovely as Alencia can be loved by parents without blood ties. So until the very end, the mother never asked herself how she was doing. There was a coldness in Mel's eyes. If you want to survive, just run for your life. Once the Emperor discovers the truth, you and I will both die. After that, the two of them got into the carriage. Upon learning Mel's name, Sia exclaimed about fate. What a strange coincidence that their names are all flower-related. Yeah, their names were all given by the queen, because he loves flowers. The maid felt a sense of unease. This girl looks too much like the late Empress. There was no conversation along the way. Xia was calmer than expected. It seems he truly is a very clever man. The Emperor would surely recognize at a glance that Alencia is his daughter. Princess Jia decided to abandon everything and leave. Let the Emperor recognize his true daughter. In front of the imperial ministers, Mel pushed Xia in front of the Emperor. There is someone I want to introduce to your majesty. Doesn't she look a lot like the late Empress? So I wanted your majesty to see her as well. When the Emperor clearly saw Xia's face, his gaze no longer turned to Mel. The Chancellor immediately ended the meeting upon seeing this. The Emperor could definitely recognize at a glance that Alencia was his true daughter. Not wanting to disturb the father and daughter, Mel quietly left the room. Everything was ready. The only thing he could do now was to leave without regrets. A greeting from Dries came from outside. Mel used thirst as an excuse to send him away, and silently said goodbye. Thank you for taking care of me all along. He stopped just as he was about to leave the room. That was the birthday gift the Emperor gave him. He reminded himself not to be greedy. It never belonged to him anyway. After that, he put the model back in its place. As expected, the outside has turned into chaos. Thanks to this disturbance, he can take the opportunity to blend into the crowd and escape. Hearing people around him discussing him, he quickened his pace. Is it the princess? Hearing Nizar's voice from behind, Mel felt a chill run down his spine. May I ask if you are the princess? If you look back, you'll be discovered. But even so, a maid cannot ignore the young duke. At this moment, unexpectedly, Avery reached out a helping hand to the duke. There is something I need you to confirm. As he walked away, he murmured, maybe I got it wrong. Until the footsteps faded away, Mel dared to move. I must leave quickly. Your Highness, it's time to get up. We've prepared some hot milk tea. Well done, Philomel. May I take a bit of your time? Memories trickle in and touch the heart. He resolutely lifts his head, not daring to look back even once. Along the rugged and uneven path, he puts on the ring of beauty on his hand, imagining the places he wants to go in his mind. Immediately, the light emitted from the gem envelopes his whole body. Goodbye to everyone. At this moment, the Emperor's residence was silent. They sat facing each other with identical colored pupils. You are His Majesty the Emperor, right? The quiet Alencia spoke first. Knowing the other was the Emperor, she took the initiative to speak. Her cute cheeks turned even rosier. Are you my dad? The sudden explosive statement surprised both of them. Every time I ask my mom, she always says dad has black hair. and deep blue eyes just like mine. So, may I ask, Your Majesty, is he my dad? Before getting an answer, Eustace suddenly turned his head. Someone is using his power somewhere. Soon, Dreas burst into the room. Princess Philomel has gone missing, leaving only a letter. Dear Dad, Alencia is your biological daughter. During my last outing, I happened to encounter him. After following him, I met his mother, named Catherine Ensign. She is the queen's friend and maid. As soon as she saw my face, she cried and confessed all the facts to me. When the queen gave birth in her hometown, out of jealousy, she swapped her child with the princess. I am not your biological daughter. The false daughter will never see you again. Thank you for your continuous support. Wishing you good health, and may you always be happy with your biological daughter. Eustace's arm fell weakly. The letter in his hand mobilized all possible manpower. His voice was very low, but by the last sentence, but it erupted like a volcano. I want to find my daughter. The princess cut ties with the emperor. She left alone to find her family in the demon tower. After hearing the news of Mel's disappearance, the emperor and her fiancé went mad with worry. The entire empire is covered with his portraits. Nazar hasn't slept for 3 days and nights. If only I had called out to him that day, perhaps they wouldn't have missed each other. However, the sudden appearance of the true princess quickly led to rumors spreading in the palace. Before long, the emperor also fell, even with all his divine power, even with his body at its limit. But even a single clue would be good, because in Eustace's heart, he always believed that Philomel was his daughter. Compared to the real princess, the emperor's attitude was much colder. Sio was beaming with happiness. She finally found her dad. Eustace couldn't understand why the wet nurse had cared for Mel since she was a baby. A total of 9 years. He accepted Xia's existence so calmly. But why does he still not dare to believe that his daughter is no longer his daughter? The room fell silent for a long time, until the appearance of another woman broke the silence. Xia recognized her mother at a glance, but in reality, she is Mel's biological mother. Eustace strides toward Catherine. Tell me, did you really trade your daughter for mine? Catherine trembles in fear at his overwhelming presence. After a long pause, she finally speaks. That's right, Alencia is His Majesty's daughter. Philomel is my daughter. A tearing sound and a chilling scream erupt. It was the blade piercing Catherine's hand. Xia pleaded with the emperor. Please don't kill mother. But with His Majesty's temperament, he would never allow her to live. Eustace questioned Catherine about why she repays kindness with cruelty. Have you forgotten how good he was to you? The pain of the body made him forget the fear. Catherine shouted. It's unfair if you don't ignore me. If Isabella hadn't returned home, then none of this would have happened. He silently aimed the blade at Catherine's neck. Dad, please, don't kill me. Mom, the daughter's tearful plea couldn't stop the raised blade. But the expected ending did not occur the next second. Instead, there was a sound of metal hitting the ground. Eustace's arrow slipped from his hand. It's really like him. Why did I only realize now that the child looks so much like you? Put him in prison. The false princess escaped and found her biological father. Yet the true princess does not receive the emperor's favor. Beneath her innocent and harmless cute exterior, hiding the true nature of the scheming green tea. Isn't Dad unhappy to find me? Poland comforts him. Not at all. His Majesty needs time to accept it. Having received the desired answer, Alencia was not very happy. Instead, she left with a cold face. This is different from what he expected. At the northernmost point of the empire, everyone is discussing the matter of the Demoness. Just in case. Mel dyed her hair pink. She is constantly channeling magic, but she still feels uneasy. Wherever she goes, she hears insults. Am I really that annoying? After that, she set off to the magic tower to find her biological father. A structure taller than the castle. An endless stream of people lined up. I heard even nobles find it hard to meet the master of the magic tower. At that moment, an old man initiated a conversation. You have no chance today. Even if you queue now, it won't be your turn. It will reopen next week. Mel's heart sank. But soon the old man changed his mind again. He knows some wizards. But it requires a price. Knowing that the other party is a rogue eyeing money, the matter became much easier. He just opened the glittering pouch of gold. The old man stared thoughtfully. In a moment of distraction, he had his pocket snatched. Mel chased after him from behind. The old man smirked in triumph. In the next second, he suddenly lost his balance. The old man tumbled to the ground. A man in a long robe came into view. What a low-level scammer this guy is. The old man cursed loudly. He insulted his parents. The man grinned and chuckled. Unfortunately, my parents didn't teach me to respect the elderly. In the territory of the magic tower, I will deal with you according to the laws of the magic tower. Upon hearing that he was from the magic tower, Mel panicked and asked, did that person die? The man murmured after the first time, shouting into the air, Lashin. Don't just look. Come out. Oh, you've been found. A red-haired man appeared out of nowhere. The two kept arguing. Neither side is getting away. Mel is caught in the middle. Her face is full of question marks. What's going on here? They both look at Mel at the same time. So, miss, what are you doing in the magic tower? Mel gets straight to the point. He wants to see the lord of the tower. Sean asked him why. Mel hesitated and said, because I am his daughter. She thought he would think she was crazy. But unexpectedly, his reaction was unusually calm. Without saying a word, he took her through the back door. Although it was surprising, saving her life was a priority. With his father as a support, he was able to survive in the hands of Zhenhuan. But what's strange is, when Mel asked Sean if Mo Taju was married, the answer was indeed no, although the possibility of an affair was ruled out. What about having a child? Sean guessed his confusion. So when the girl asked herself why she wasn't surprised, he was instead curious about why his sister was late. Before he could react, Shuren led Mel into the magic circle. Philomel, your highness, don't wear that before going in, because Luqiong doesn't like it. Divine power. Mel removed the ring and explained that she didn't mean to hide her identity. Fortunately, Shin didn't intend to expose her, but instead reminded her once again not to take it too seriously. Listen to what Luqiong has to say. With a mix of apprehension and anticipation, Mel waited quietly outside the door. Sean pushed the door open and reported that someone claiming to be your daughter had arrived. Luqiong impatiently scratched her head. Now that she's here, you have to see her at least once. In a moment, Mel's eyes widened. Silver hair and dazzling golden eyes. The person before him was his biological father. But why, aside from having similar eye colors, are all the other features different? After the man introduced himself to Mel, he had him sit across from him. He extended his hand and signaled, give me your hand, okay. Mel, caught off guard, placed his hand up. The moment they made contact, an overwhelming pain spread throughout his body. Lu Qiong murmured about the empty shell devoid of magic, then waved her hand in apology. Xian sighed. He explained that by infusing his magic, he could confirm your magic. This would determine if you are truly his child. Lu Qiong casually said that this young lady is indeed my daughter. The sole attitude left Mel feeling disheartened. All along, he depicted countless moments of reunion with his biological father. There are many questions hidden in his heart, like why he abandoned his pregnant mother. Does he have even a little bit of love for himself? When Mel dared to ask him, his father only said 4 words, I don't remember. The abandoned faux princess was merely a failed product created through experimentation. Even the brothers are all half-siblings. Lu Qiong carefully examined her daughter. Suddenly, she snapped her fingers. Mel's hair instantly turned back to brown. Looking at it this way, perhaps it will remind her of something. A long time ago, there was a child who possessed the power to slay dragons. At a cost, his heart is empty, like a machine devoid of emotion. But one day, he wanted a child to inherit his power. So he gathered a large number of female volunteers, using technology and ruthless methods to create life. But this was not simple. Children have no magic, but they have magical talents. In the end, he interrupted the experiment, and decided to stop aging. He wanted this power to last forever. Unfortunately, he still couldn't remember what Mel's mother looked like. But is it necessary to remember? Compared to that, you came to me because you wanted something, right? Does that mean it costs money? Plus the money your mother didn't take. I will compensate you. Mayor stands up, and tells him it's unnecessary. The reunion imagined countless times turns out to be so desolate. Because of father's cold-bloodedness, he walked out of the room, feeling dejected. He left behind a remark, I'm sorry. He won't be coming back again. Lu Qiong didn't understand why he was crying. Xian sighed helplessly. Don't you know? That child is different from us. Outside the corridor, Mayor smiled foolishly. I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't have any expectations of people like that. At that moment, Scene caught up. Maybe your mother didn't tell you about your birth. Mel said stubbornly, I know. My biological father is shameless. After saying that, he immediately apologized. I shouldn't be angry at people who don't matter. Xian pointed to himself and said, I am your half-brother. Aside from me, you have 2 other brothers. Of course, each mother is different. Once Mel calmed down, he told him the story of Lu Qiong. So there were only 4 surviving children. The 3 brothers grew up in the magic tower. To them, Lu Qiong was more like a teacher than a father. Mel understood everything. He was not the fruit of love, but a failed experiment. He had no place to belong. Before leaving, he received Sean's concern. It's not because of my sister, but because I want to do research. Why is it that those who are genetically similar yet have only half the emotional connection are different? Mel is normal. Then Sean suggested, if you don't like research, how about being an assistant? Because the royal family cannot reach here, he can also receive the protection of the magic tower. Mel said she would consider it, watching his sister's departing figure. Sean murmured, what about the person with no answers? Little did he know, their father was also feeling down. Sean understood that his father cared about his sister, but he remained stubborn, pretending to be indifferent. In Xian's eyes, his father's prideful behavior is just childish. So he deliberately brings up his sister. That child seems to have nowhere to go. She isn't even an adult yet. How will she survive in this dangerous world? If Jeremy hadn't helped just now, I would have almost lost all my money to a thief. Jian Yiqiong still expressed no interest. Xian smiled helplessly. When will she mature? The stone has already been thrown. In a few days, the outcome will be clear. Not long after, Mello sat in a tavern, recalling brother Xian's words, although she really wanted to accept his proposal, but having to live face to face with a hypocritical father. When can the emperor stop the search? He must be living quite happily now. In the book, Eustace compensates all the love owed to the queen to his true daughter. On the contrary, Philomel is loved by no one. Speaking of which, Melas decides to escape abroad. As the power of the ring gradually fades away, she needs a magical item that can be replaced. Before going, a self-aware daughter named Luo Sang walked into the store. To stand firmly in the central social circle, she needs the latest trendy magical decorations. In the end, there wasn't a single item that satisfied her. What was even more frustrating was that a commoner was shopping in the same store. Upon learning that the store does not have royal permission to sell disguisable props, Mello was about to leave, but was grabbed by someone the next second. The woman fixed her gaze on the red sword. She adamantly claimed that he had stolen it. Mello shook off her hand to explain, it's a misunderstanding, but was once again trapped by the woman's strange strength. The maid saw this and held onto her tightly. Luo Sang took the opportunity to snatch the ring, but when she turned around, she was stunned. The disguised Mello gradually revealed her true appearance. Luo Sang hurriedly called for the security team. Mello repeatedly argued that she was mistaken. She claimed she just looked similar. Suddenly, with a loud slap, a hand landed hard on the face. Still so arrogant. Do you think you're still a princess? After that, he happily got into the carriage. Thanks to that foolish woman, he could use this opportunity to befriend the real princess. Eager to look out the window, he suddenly stopped the carriage. After seeing the man's face clearly, he exclaimed, "Are you the little duke of the Aberton family?" After the false princess escaped, she was imprisoned. Upon hearing his news, her sleepless fiancé and the emperor, as well as her seemingly cold-blooded biological father, all rushed madly towards his location. Since the identity of Zhen Huan has been confirmed, this fake has become a rat in the street. The evil woman takes advantage of others' misfortunes. The guard's insatiable greed grows bolder. This pushes Mei Luo to the brink of collapse. He has asked himself countless times, is this how it ends in emptiness? Will the villain never escape the fate of a tragic death? Not until they come looking for them. There is still a glimmer of hope for me to survive. Melro insists that he is just a commoner. He merely resembles the fake princess. Seeing that they don't believe him, Melro brings forth a witness to prove his identity. Please go to the magic tower and call the chief mage, Lixin. I am his sister. My brother loves me very much. If he knew I was imprisoned in a place like this, how angry he would be. This statement successfully swayed the guard. As soon as Lixin knows about this, he will immediately understand the situation. But unfortunately, the captain is coming. Notice that those who recognize the false princess have arrived. Ask him, and it will be clear soon. Mello's heart was in his throat. If he just had a little bit of time, he could escape. It seems even God is not on his side. A low voice came through the iron door. Philomel, your highness. Hearing a familiar voice, Mello suddenly looked up, only to see Nazel's worried face. Finding the one she longs for, is thanks to Lo Zhang's greed. That golden hair and that face full of allure. is the best groom candidate in the empire. I can't help but wonder. He should have already broken off his engagement with Princess Jia. This is an opportunity that leaves a deep impression. He immediately introduced his identity. He told Nizar about finding Princess Jia in Angel. Upon hearing this, he instantly dismounted from his horse. He urgently asked where Mel was. Luo Sang looked eager for praise. He wanted to be complimented for locking the fake princess in prison, but he saw Nazar's face suddenly turn cold. Without saying a word, he turned and left. He mounted his horse and quickly headed towards the prison, leaving Luo Sang alone, filled with confusion. Far away in the magic tower, his father couldn't sit still either. At 1 a.m., he woke Xian up. The daughter just left for a day. Lu Qiong started asking about his news, and ordered Xian to contact Mei Luo now. She wants to meet him in person. Xian firmly refused. That child should be sleeping too. Contact him as soon as it's light. After a long silence, Lu Qiong, however, does not plan to leave. As expected, it's now. Soon, he will be kicked out. She inside. After all, he is someone who only thinks about himself. But soon it will be time to prepare for the new family. The fake princess has finally been found by her fiancé. Yet Mei does not want to step out of the prison. Rather than being taken back to the palace to face my father, I would rather die here as a criminal. And the person I least want to see right now is Nassar, who has a crush on me. Guilt prevents Mei from making eye contact with him. Looking at the silent princess in the cage, Nassar drew his sword from his waist. With one swing, he cut through the iron chains. Mei suddenly looked up and locked eyes with him. Nazar slowly extended his hand, pleading, I never thought you would be in such a place. Your Highness, please come back to the palace with me. Mel did not understand why he showed such an expression. It was as if he genuinely worried about her. Afraid she would be cold, Nazar draped his outer coat over her. Seeing this, the guard beside him couldn't help but doubt, isn't Princess Jia a criminal? The leader in the middle denied this statement. The only order he received from the emperor was to find the missing princess by any means necessary. Never once did I say it was to capture criminals. The guards who had previously disrespected the princess were flustered. At that moment, Mel turned her gaze towards them. Nazar spoke first, saying that the most important thing now is to get her highness back. I will go ahead. Soon, a killing intent was revealed in his eyes. But you need to clarify why this situation occurred in the future. Facing overwhelming threats, the man was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. At that moment, Mel asked him to wait. He raised his hand and questioned if it was fake. Then be prepared for the thought of being disabled. Now I'm giving you a chance. Just do as you said. Punishing without a trial is a capital offense. The man knelt down and begged for mercy. Mel turned his head back to the prison. And you think I'm worse than you? Not even worth having a conversation. After saying that, he turned and left. Nasser, however, stood still. The killing intent in his gaze intensified, scaring the big guy into panic. The chilling atmosphere made everyone shiver. He will remember the names of everyone present, and warn them not to entertain thoughts of escape. However, he actually hopes they will try to escape. After all, he is not as merciful as the emperor. Soon the two of them got into the carriage back to the palace. Mayor was calm on the surface, while Sui was quite flustered. He left the prophecy book at the hotel. If I go back to get it, I will definitely be suspected. At this moment, Nasal suddenly placed his hand on his swollen face. He sharply asked if he had been hit. Mel explained that he just fell. Nasal sighed helplessly. He handed him the ointment made by the magician. With a complicated mood, he lowered his head. No matter what, he definitely wouldn't want to let himself help him wipe. Mel took the ointment and said thank you. Thinking to himself, Nizar must have misunderstood. The emperor couldn't possibly search himself under the pretext of looking for his daughter. So what could he do to get out of this? In that case, Mel decided to take a risk. He suddenly leaped towards Nizar. The man, who was originally puzzled, suddenly turned red. He leaned his head close to his forehead and pleaded. Just pretend you didn't see me. He was about to ask the reason, but Mel stood up and looked at him eagerly. Nassar awkwardly turned his head away. It was too close for comfort. And suddenly standing up was dangerous. At that moment, a jolt caused Mel to lose his balance. Nassar immediately reached out and tightly wrapped his arm around Mel's waist. Once the carriage stabilized, he hurriedly asked with concern if Mel was alright. With a tearful voice, Mel pleaded for help. If I go back to the palace, I will die. You wouldn't want me to die, would you? Nassar hesitated for a long time at that moment. Nassar told him to calm down first. Who in this world would dare to harm the princess? There are rumors that the princess is an imposter, but he never believed it. Until Mel admitted it herself. She is indeed not the emperor's true daughter. So as long as I leave now, I can have whatever I want. He always gives Mel a deep understanding that he has always been a person of good character. But at this moment, a look appeared on the man's face that he had never seen before. Nassar covered his forehead and looked away. Why test me with such words? To keep calm, he pressed Mel back in his seat. He did not apologize for his rude words. However, he could no longer conceal Mel's existence, because just before getting into the carriage, the magic messenger had already brought the news back to the palace. However, Mel could stay in his residence to avoid the storm. Nizel would report to his majesty that he had passed away. Mel sighed. He doesn't understand why he would rather deceive his lord than help himself. The man mutters softly under his breath. Embarrassed, he covers his face and stammers. But he doesn't realize the intention behind it. Instead, to ease the awkwardness, he agrees. Nassar's expression dims. He slowly lifts his head. With a gentle smile, he said, you must be tired. Your Highness, why not take a little nap? Mel stared at him blankly. According to the original work, he was supposed to become lovers with Alencia. He wouldn't have any regrets. But why did he still show a sad look? Looking at the sleeping Mel, Nassar understands. He is drawing a line with himself. The closer he gets to himself, the further he will be. But he once thought, as long as he holds his position well, one day he will stand by his side. Now he finally understands. During this time, the relationship they built was merely a superficial engagement. I realized too late. I was foolish. Because of this, Mel couldn't sleep all night. The next morning, he hurriedly wanted to leave. Nassar had prepared food for him, and asked him not to refuse even this. Mel had no choice but to agree. Soon Nassar ordered according to his taste. It turned out he knew he liked light food. Nassar asked him what else he needed. Mel shyly asked if he could borrow a little. After mentioning money, the two fell silent for a moment. Nassar awkwardly rummaged through his pockets. He discovered he also didn't have any cash on him. He quickly turned around. He solemnly extended his hand to his subordinate. He would repay the other tenfold. This made Mel see how flustered he looked. He hurriedly turned back to explain. In that moment, Mel began to fantasize about the future. What if they could just get along naturally? Just then, he was suddenly interrupted. His subordinate brought bad news. The emperor has escaped. A dark-haired man in pajamas hurried over. Philo Mel, where have you been all this time? Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Mel was overwhelmed by his surroundings. He realized that there was truly nowhere to escape now. He would definitely die. His vision gradually became blurry. Mel fainted. The Emperor hurried over to pick him up. Maesar, who was a step too late, lowered his head in despair. He kept murmuring about the princess. In the next moment, Justice suddenly channeled his divine power and held Mel tight. They instantly teleported back to the palace. Maesar was about to speak and take him along, but he saw Mel's weak face gradually fading from view. Only he remained. He stood there in a daze for a long. He picked up the hairpin that Mel had dropped. He intended to find a wizard. Now he would go to the palace himself. But the nearby wizards had all left this morning, because the Duke sent word that they needed to do other things. Earlier, his father had advised him to forget the false princess, to focus on pleasing the true princess. Narsel slowly got up, decided to go to the magic tower in person to find someone. Meanwhile, the master of the magic tower, Luqiong, asked her son with a hidden dagger in her smile who was responsible for bringing Mel here. Le Xian awkwardly scratched his face. He never expected things to turn out this way. If he had known, he wouldn't have sent him away. In the end, it was also because his father drove him away. But Luqiong was also very surprised. In the past, the children who came to him wanted money. So he believed all children were the same. The stone door suddenly opened. The other two sons rushed in a panic. They told him what had happened. Their sister has now been taken to the capital. The second brother, Carden, is upset about this, calling sister a sinner. That's outrageous. We must go rescue him immediately. Third brother Jeremy expressed no interest. He chose to withdraw. Luqiong wants to personally bring her daughter back. But considering Mel's position, even if the Empire no longer has power over him, but on the surface, their relationship still seems good. Cardian anxiously seeks a solution. If his sister is locked up like this, he won't be able to eat. He'll only grow weaker. Upon hearing this, Luqiong suddenly stands up. He needs to go check on Mel first. He glanced at Sean. Let me be clear. Anyway, you won't stop me this time. Sean wouldn't dare, because only he can sneak through the palace barrier. Then they would use other methods to get in, but they still can't be reckless. He advised his father not to cause trouble. Just go along with them. On the other side, Eustace cursed, damn it, the child is about to die. Where is the physician? He was initially puzzled by the sudden disappearance of His Highness. But now it seems it's related to Her Highness the Princess, which isn't surprising. At that moment, the physician arrived. After a careful examination, it was found that Her Highness the Princess was simply suffering from accumulated fatigue and lack of sleep. In this state, she was overly frightened. It seemed she encountered someone who terrified her just before fainting. Faced with this conclusion, the Emperor's expression gradually darkened. After using teleportation twice in a row, his subordinates wanted him to rest first. Eustace insisted on staying by his daughter's bedside. Everyone understood that when it comes to matters concerning the princess, His Majesty becomes stubborn. But fortunately, you have returned. Philomel, the princess must know that the false princess is imprisoned in the magic tower. Father immediately transformed into a cat and sneaked into the palace. But in reality, it was the Emperor who wanted to take him as a daughter. After repeated pleas, the real princess demanded that he become her maid. Mel confessed to the Emperor that he did not want to be His Majesty's daughter. Ever since he understood, he had never regarded Eustace as a father. Because everything here is hell for him. Just because of a word from the Emperor 10 years ago, saying he hoped he would live like a dead man. So Mel lived on according to his wishes. Before the Emperor left the room, Mel told him not to grab me anymore. Your Majesty, these words pierced deeply into Eustace's heart. It turns out his daughter heard everything outside the door. He kept apologizing over and over, but no matter what he said, it was just an excuse. Still, even so, he held on to the last bit of hope to persuade her. He hoped Mel would reconsider the adoption. Even if it meant staying here for a year before leaving, it would be fine. After that, no matter where you go, I won't hold you back. If there's something you want to do, I'll support you anytime. If you think a year is too long, how about 10 months? Mel was about to speak, but was interrupted. 8 months, listen to Mel continue to talk about it. Then he immediately changed it to 6 months. After extreme negotiations between the two, they finally settled on 3 months. After saying this, Justice ran away. Not long after, Xia actually dragged Mel straight into the Emperor's office. Not caring at all about Mel's feelings, she rushed straight to Father. Dad, please, allow Philomel to be my maid. Father was stunned for a second after hearing this. Cecilia quickly explained that being a maid means she can stay in the palace. Eustace sighed. You're insisting on making Mel your maid. Is this what you hoped for? Elixia, no matter how you grew up, you are a princess now. Xia choked up, her eyes glimmering with tears. She murmured, I'm sorry. I just feel that Mel is too pitiful. Don't cry, the one who should apologize is not me. Hearing that Father Emperor is considering him, Maya raised his hand to indicate it was okay. This eased the awkwardness. At this moment, Father Emperor stated that he would adopt Maya as his daughter, but it must be with the consent of the parties involved. And Xia immediately took his hand. Then we are sisters. Let's get along well from now on. Halfway through the conversation, Xia suddenly leaned in close to the Emperor's face and gave him a kiss right in front of Mayor. She repeatedly emphasized that this was a goodnight kiss. After he turned away, the two of them froze at the same time. He just couldn't adapt to his daughter's personality. Mel had just brought up the adoption during the day. The Emperor immediately stood up to interrupt. He was afraid Mel would reject it again. Before he could say anything, he left. That night, seeing the princess return home, the maid excitedly hugged Mel. He was very worried that Mel might encounter some misfortune, but luckily, he returned safely. The two reminisced about old times. Suddenly, a cat's meow came from outside the window. As soon as the window was open, a white cat jumped in. It stared intently at Mel, purring and acting cute towards him, making the fake princess leave. The cold-blooded Emperor, her biological father, turned into a kitten. Meow meow. Mel gently strokes the obedient silver cat in front of her. She wanted to take her in and live here. But where is her own home? Even if the Emperor says he wants to adopt Mel, she is still just a fake princess. So leaving the palace is only a matter of time. The woman looked at her with pain in her heart. The girl in front of her was someone she had watched grow up. Pamela had disappeared again, just like last time. He decided to stay here and sleep tonight. After a long time, Mel still couldn't fall asleep. Although the plot of the novel had changed, a sense of unease lingered deep within. Noticing that he seemed troubled, the head maid offered some comfort. Although she couldn't be of much help, she was willing to listen to him. Any words shared with another would ease his mind. Although Mel was very grateful, there were some things that couldn't be expressed. So far, she has become quite curious as to why the relationship between His Majesty and Lady Zhenhuan seems so unfamiliar. Upon hearing this question, Silvercat suddenly opened her eyes, listening as the head maid patiently explained. Although they are father and daughter, they have only just met not long ago, still not adapted to this kinship. Both sides need to spend time and effort to maintain a deep relationship. Mel still cannot understand. The two people in the book became a special father-daughter relationship at first sight. But when she met her biological mother, what she received was only heart-wrenching words. When she saw her biological father, she realized that she had nowhere to go, and Eustace was the person he trusted the least. Every day in the past, it felt like he was walking on a cliff. There was no one to rely on. He lived with the anxiety of dying at any moment. He wore a mask to hide his emotions. He endured for 7 long years. After he confessed everything. On the contrary, it feels quite refreshing. But why do I feel so complicated? Hearing the faint sobbing, Mao immediately looked up. The lady tactfully changed the subject. If you must leave here, would you like to stay at my place? Because if you leave the palace, I will resign. In theory, he would continue to serve Lady Zhenhuan, but he cannot change his heart. He wants to ask Mei to promise him one thing, that she will not leave without a word again. Mei is embraced by this love. A tickling warmth seeps into her heart. She agreed, and began to think about those who give up out of fear. Perhaps they think the same way. As Mel gradually fell asleep, a shadow slowly appeared. Luqiong finally regained her human form. She leaned down and gently said to Mel, I've come to get you. But recalling Sean's words, don't cause trouble, just wait for them to come. He stared at his daughter for a long time. A strange feeling arose within him. He had never felt this way when interacting with his sons. Yet he wanted to be close to this daughter who despised him. Luqiong, who was indifferent to everything, was now starting to reflect on her own behavior. Everyone who has met him in the past would feel scared. Luqiong, an orphan, heard a guest. Knowing that the other party started it first, the shop owner insisted on firing him. Luqiong didn't understand. The other party made the first move. Why can't he fight back? Is it just because he has connections to the nobility? The shopkeeper's hesitant reaction confirmed Luqiong's thoughts. Muttering softly that it would be best if he could never come back, even if his physique and strength were unfavorable, as long as he aimed for the vital points. This flower frightened the shopkeeper. Those eyes that seemed to be looking at a distance gradually made him aware of his own differences. In comparison, Mel is not afraid at all. Luqiong starts to hypothesize. What if he was born in the magic tower? Perhaps everything would be different. Early the next morning, the dismissed nanny was actually summoned back to the palace by the true princess. Not only does it mock Mel for being heartless, but it also forces him to leave here. Merle couldn't be bothered with him, even if he didn't say anything. She was going to leave anyway. Stop rambling. Just back off. Upon hearing this, the nanny completely turned against her. Because of you and that damned mother of yours. Our poor princess. Only now do I see Dad. Although the head maid stood up to refute him, Mel was already completely disappointed. The nanny was someone who took care of him when he was little. How could she do something like this? Just when Mel was feeling down, the nanny's body suddenly swayed back and forth. It looked like she had been pushed. Screaming and struggling on the ground. Feeling embarrassed, Xia shook her head, coldly grabbing her arm, trying to help her up. A meow came from behind. Looking back, the white cat was stretching contentedly, with a particularly satisfied expression. At this moment, the nanny kept crying out in pain, grumbling that the guy should be in jail like his mother. Melton was momentarily stunned. His mother was arrested. The big guy was alive. Not long after, Poland came to apologize. Faced with his tough questioning, Poland promised to have His Majesty kick the nanny out right away. Mel also decided to go along. Based on his understanding of the nanny, he knew she wouldn't leave quietly. Seeing the white cat meowing continuously, Mel guessed it wanted to follow him. He decisively told it no. He thought the cat wouldn't understand. Unexpectedly, it obediently crawled back to its nest. Mel changed his mind. If the master hasn't shown up before he leaves, then he can take care of it. At least he won't leave with nothing. The emperor finally found his true daughter, but he was even more reluctant to let the false princess go. He even went so far as to send away the bedridden wet nurse to keep her, and demanded an apology to his daughter. Upon hearing this news, the true princess choked up with tears. The wet nurse is too pitiful. She hurt her back and can't move at all. How can she leave the palace? At least wait until her back is better before leaving. After saying this, she turned her gaze to Mel. Philomel, I will talk to Dad properly. Can you forgive the nurse? The Count of Poland politely declined, but what followed was a scolding. I am asking Philomel for help. Please, Count, step aside. Elencia's words instantly changed the atmosphere. In this way, the one who made the nurse leave turned out to be Mel. If he refuses now, he will be seen as the villain who drives away the sick elderly. Although he will leave soon, he does not care about so-called reputation. But he must give Xia a warning. So Mel agreed to this matter, and proposed that the nanny share a room with Xia, so that someone is there when she is sick. She will definitely get better quickly. Coincidentally, Xia had mentioned that. There are many things she doesn't understand here. Besides, the bed is big enough. She should assist the princess in this room. Xia was about to refute this when the wet nurse proudly expressed her agreement. Mel successfully achieved her goal. Since you don't want to leave the palace, you must stay by the princess's side. Then the stubborn Elencia couldn't refuse. Immediately, the wet nurse started to feign tears. He had no choice but to agree. Seeing this, Mel prepared to leave. As she walked forward, she heard the wet nurse shouting. She will use clear methods to eliminate the smell of the commoners. I believe it won't be long before Xia will want to personally drive away the wet nurse. Mel walked out of the room in a good mood. Poland followed closely behind. She admired the princess's generosity. Upon hearing the title of princess, Mel emphasized that she is no longer a princess. Even if His Majesty the Emperor said he wanted to adopt her, she would refuse. As expected, Poland was equally shocked. Mel explained that even if she accepted the proposal, the nobles would not let it go easily. Royal adoptions are mostly for political purposes. In other words, for someone like him, with no status, adoption is not significant. Poland claims there was a precedent during the reign of the 7th emperor, but that was 800 years ago. Moreover, he only received the title of emperor after his death. He was not emperor during his lifetime. Letting commoners become children will not be opposed. It is obvious that Poland's evidence is insufficient. 3 days ago, he already mentioned to Your Majesty that this is an unprecedented matter. Yet Your Majesty said that no matter what method, we must unlock potential. Mel has quietly made plans. He needs to talk to His Majesty before the Earl fabricates history. But before that, he has something more important to do. Visit his biological mother, Lady Catherine, who is still in prison. His mother regrets being caught and imprisoned. His Majesty will never forgive him. He will die more cruelly than anyone else. He understands this is his own doing, but he could never let go of his longing for Isabella. 29 years ago, 8-year-old Caterine met the Lord's daughter, Isabella. Upon their first meeting, he enthusiastically took Caterine's hand, because in this village, he was the only one his age. The two quickly became good friends. However, their relationship began to drift apart from the day the emperor arrived in the territory. Slowly, there was distance between them. Not long after, Isabella confessed that she was going to marry the emperor. After that, she would leave this place. Catelyn was very clear that he was not worthy of her. And he also guessed that their relationship would develop to such intimacy. Rumors said the emperor was a cold, ruthless, and bloodthirsty tyrant. But the timing was completely different. Although he was the first to have feelings. Thinking of this, he immediately stopped himself. He should truly wish his friend well. Isabella invited him to enter the palace. Upon hearing this news, his merchant father and wicked brother were overjoyed. Thanks to him, they could climb to greater heights. So he left without hesitation, without a trace of reluctance. Thanks to Isabella, Catherine's life in the palace had always been quite comfortable, and she received more rewards than a maid should. But that was only because the emperor turned a blind eye, considering she was friends with the empress. It was just a matter of looking the other way. But Catherine became addicted to it, lost in comfort, having inappropriate personal desires. I heard that your majesty's mother is a commoner. Perhaps your majesty does not mind his status. A few days later, Catherine mustered the courage to confess. Of course, the foolish person who betrays a friend only receives the anger and contempt of the man she loves. In the end, Catherine was driven out of the palace. Your majesty warned her not to appear again. Otherwise, kill her. At that moment, a beast's roar suddenly came from behind. Catherine was frozen in fear. Soon, she was surrounded by a pack of wolves. An intense feeling of fear made her body stiffen. She even gave up on escaping. After all, she had done something unforgivable. The next second, the beast lunged at her. Are you trying to die? The silver-haired man in the black cloak stepped on the wolf. Catelyn was staring at him in shock. You didn't think about running away, did you? Forget it, I don't want to know. Just stay there and don't move. I went through a lot to save you. If you get involved again, you will only disturb me. After speaking, the man's hands radiated with golden light. A massive magic circle enveloped the pack of wolves. He clenched his fists and smiled lightly. A huge wave of energy surged towards the ground. Catherine suddenly panicked. Catherine was born as an experimental subject. Upon discovering the truth, she decided to abandon her family. Back then, the man suggested that she was recruiting women to bear children for him. Catherine didn't agree right away. Instead, she returned home first. But what she received was her father's ruthless scolding and her brother's impatient threats. She thought she could at least benefit from the queen's favor. But it turned out she was just a useless person. Catherine's heart was filled with shame and regret. The master of the tower once said, no matter how useless a person is, if they give birth to the child of the greatest magician in the world. Thinking of this, extreme self-loathing and the desire for recognition took on a different flavor. For this reason, he participated in the experiment of the magic tower. Rather than wanting to become a valuable person, it could be said that he wanted to find satisfaction through his child. But even if the child is exceptional, it doesn't mean he will become outstanding. But by the time I realized this, it was already too late. When my father learned that I was pregnant with a stranger's child, he angrily moved to the capital, leaving me all alone. From that day on, the Harvins family no longer had me. Soon it was time for the birth. Isabella, who had been staying in the palace, came to visit. Also because she wanted to give birth in her hometown, so the emperor allowed her to return. Catherine was very dissatisfied. What exactly was she lacking compared to her? Why did she win that person's love and have it all? Yet I look like this. Now, every time I face Isabella, Catherine feels utterly miserable. Not long after, the queen collapsed due to sudden labor pains. He struggled through the pain to leave the bed. Fortunately, the child was born safely. But even with many doctors and magicians around, Isabella still hasn't opened her eyes. After the death of her only friend, Tardelin switched the two babies with similar hair colors. From then on, she left her hometown and arrived at a sparsely populated village. Occasionally, she would hear news from the capital. The emperor, who had lost his beloved wife, went mad and killed those who couldn't save the queen. The beloved princess who took her place is named Philomel. As time passed, Alencia grew more and more like the late queen. As the child grew, Catherine had to face the unbearable guilt even more. Every day she was tormented by nightmares and hallucinations. Seeing her mother break the vase, Lucia stepped forward to show concern. But she was met with harsh disdain. Her mother said she didn't want to see her face. She not only didn't leave, but was determined to clean up the pieces. It's okay if you hate me, but I hope Mom doesn't get hurt. Although I don't know why Mom is like this. I will do better. At that moment, Catherine finally understood that this child was not Isabella. She was her own daughter, Alencia. Catherine covered her face and cried bitterly, holding her daughter tightly in her arms, constantly apologizing. Little Shia sweetly said it was okay. But one day, she suddenly asked her mom what her name was. Recalling this, Catherine was startled. On that day a few months ago, Sia suddenly became very strange. But what's the use of thinking about it now? Before he died, he still had a wish. The child who was supposed to live a happy life. What exactly happened? At that moment, footsteps were heard. I thought it would be Alencia. But the girl said apologetically, I am not the person you were hoping for. I am the despised Philomel, the Golden Lady.